Hello, my name is Casey Fritz, and I'm the Schools and Community Recycling Coordinator at Marin Sanitary Service. This lesson is meant to give you a little bit of an overview of what our practices are for recycling, compost, and garbage in advance of the virtual tour that is self-guided. So hopefully you leave this lesson with a bit more information on what we do and how we do it. So first of all, Marin Sanitary Service was started in 1948, so we've been around for quite a while now, and we're what's known as a resource hauler. So a hauler is a company that moves material, we haul it, and we say resources because we don't just move garbage, we move things like recycling and compost that have value as something else. So that's a resource. We have Marin Sanitary Service, which is the garbage company that you're familiar with as picking up your curbside carts and bins. The Marin Recycling Center is the facility that you're going to do a virtual tour of and see how we process the recycling once it gets here. And the Marin Resource Recovery Center is also part of the tour. That's where we process much bigger items that we're also trying to recycle if we can. We serve about 30,000 residents in the central part of Marin County and about 3,000 commercial accounts. So you can see the towns listed below there. And then I do want to point out that there's 5 total haulers in Marin County. So that leads to some different rules in different places. So I know that can get confusing, but just remember that if you're in Marin Sanitary Service territory, those are the places where they'll be following our rules. Okay, so let's first start off with why should we care about recycling and composting? It seems like people would have an easier time just throwing everything away, but there actually are some pretty significant reasons why we should be recycling and composting. So first off, it can actually save money. So a lot of the stuff that we're putting in our trash doesn't actually need to go there. You can see over here our little waste characterization study that we did in 2014. And at that time, we found that actually less than half of what was in people's garbage really belonged there, and a really big proportion of it, 38% here, was compostable material. So if you get that compostable material out of the garbage, you can significantly decrease what it is that you're throwing away into the trash. So second, California also has state laws that require people to recycle and compost at commercial sites. So the first one that you see there, AB 341, is a mandatory commercial recycling law, requires commercial businesses, and that includes schools, restaurants, different retail shops, etc., to recycle. AB 1826, right underneath there, similar thing, requires you to have compost service, and both of those laws have a threshold. So if you're generating a certain amount of waste every week, then you need to comply with those laws. So SB 1383 is the last one there. That will be coming down with regulations in 2022. And SB 1383 pretty aggressively goes after getting compostable material out of landfill because it generates tons of methane when it sits in landfill. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas and contributes to climate change. Traps a bunch of heat, leads to things like more extreme wildfires and storms. Okay, last thing. There's a big environmental impact to what we generate as waste. There's no such thing as away, like, oh, I'm throwing this away. It doesn't really go away. Something has to happen to it. So we want to think about what is the impact of disposing of our material and how can we do that responsibly. All right, so let's dive into recycling. Why is it important to recycle? So our stuff that we use every single day comes from natural resources, and we don't have an unlimited amount of those natural resources. There's a fixed amount, so we need to be really careful with how we're using them. So looking through this chart here, a lot of this is pretty obvious, but it's helpful to go through and remind yourself that paper comes from trees, and when we recycle it, we can get more paper. So 5 to 7 times you can recycle paper usually, and then you'll have to start adding in new content. But recycling that paper means that we get to use less new trees for every single piece of paper. Okay, and then right underneath that you can see that glass is made from sand, and when we recycle glass we can actually recycle it infinitely, so it doesn't actually lose quality when we recycle it, which is a pretty cool feature of glass. Right underneath there you see aluminum. Aluminum comes from bauxite ore, so we extract the metal from that ore and make aluminum. And that's a pretty environmentally destructive process to mine aluminum and extract it. But the great thing about aluminum is that it is also infinitely recyclable, does not lose quality. So once we have it, we can keep using it over and over and over again as long as we get it in the recycling. Last thing you'll see there's plastic. That is made from oil, so fossil fuels. And that plastic is generally downcycled. So downcycling is when you turn something that is recyclable, like the water bottle, and turn it into something unrecyclable, like fleece or the stretchy part of your pants or carpeting or toys. Those are all items that we cannot recycle. They are landfill once we're done using them. Okay, so that is different from the other three items here that we can use more than one time. All right, so also thinking about recycling, we have kind of a unique recycling system in Marin Sanitary Service territory. We have what's called dual stream recycling. So dual is another word for two. So we have two different types of recycling. And you can see that our trucks were designed to match that system. You can see in this picture here, the truck is emptying out just one side. So this is what's called a split body truck. So we have all the bottles and cans right here, separated in the truck from the paper and cardboard over here. So he's opening the other side of the truck now to empty that out. Okay, so we have dual stream recycling because all these beautiful bottles and cans here on this side, if someone forgot to empty them completely of their soda or another drink or something like that, and we had it mixed in with all this paper and cardboard, we could get it wet and saturated. Glass could break and embed itself into paper and cardboard, and all that stuff makes it really, really hard to recycle. So we want to be able to create new high quality paper from this old paper, and that's really hard to do if it's all wet and soggy and full of glass. So that's why we have the dual stream recycling system. All right, so now that we know why recycling is important, we're conserving our natural resources, we need to know how to do it correctly. So we have our blue recycling, and this is for clean paper and cardboard only. And by clean, I don't mean that you've never written on it. It's totally fine to write on your paper, print on it, whatever else. By clean, I just mean no contact with food or water. So this is stuff like newspapers, office paper, magazines, your mail, all the stuff that you can see in this section here, as well as cardboard from deliveries, the outside cardboard portion on cereal and not the inside plastic bag, all of this cardboard material over here. What we really don't want in the blue paper recycling are plastic bags. Glass, like I said, can break really easily and contaminate paper. And then there are things that look like paper, like a milk carton and a coffee cup, that actually have a plastic lining on the inside to make sure that the liquid doesn't leak on you. So we cannot accept those things either because the plastic has been fused to the paper, so it's no longer just paper. Okay? None of that stuff belongs in this blue paper recycling. All right, the other type of recycling, the brown recycling, is for bottles and cans. So we'll start over with the metals. This is for things like soup cans or soda cans, also aluminum foil, or those aluminum trays for baking. Those are all totally fine. As well as glass bottles and glass jars. These are things that are like single-use beverage or food glass items. We cannot accept glass that is like, oh, I have my water glass that I use every single day and put in the dishwasher. If that breaks, it actually has to go in the garbage because it's a different chemical content of glass, so it doesn't melt with all this other stuff here. So just the single-use stuff like you can see right here. All right, and the plastic, this is the most confusing part. This is not recycling for every type of plastic item that you have. It's really only for bottles, like a water bottle or a big soda bottle, jugs like a jug of milk, or a jug of laundry detergent, and tubs, like a tub of butter or a tub of yogurt. Okay, so bottles, jugs, and tubs for plastic. If it is not one of those three shapes, it is garbage. Okay, so things like the salad and takeout containers down here, utensils, plastic bags are garbage. All that stuff should not go in here. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a second. All right, so I see this question a lot. People say, hey Casey, I saw the triangle on the bottom, it has the number, doesn't that mean it's recyclable? No, that does not mean it's recyclable. So that little triangle and arrow situation really just indicates what type of plastic they use to make the product. It does not tell you that it is recyclable. Okay, so it's really only telling you what type of plastic you're holding. It does not tell you to put it in the recycling. So that's why we're saying bottles, jugs, and tubs, because the numbers really don't give you enough information to decide if it's recyclable or not. Okay, so forget about the numbers and triangles because they're not very helpful. All right, so a lot of people say that they've been recycling for a really long time and they've always been able to put in all the plastic that they have in their recycling. We have had a lot of changes happen in the recycling markets. So recycling only works if someone wants to buy all of the stuff that we're collecting. Okay, so we can't have it magically turned into something else. Someone needs to decide, hey, I want those plastic water bottles, I can turn them into this thing. Okay, so the markets have really struggled, and that is because of this graph that we're going to talk about on the right here. So this axis is time. So you can see from January 2017 all the way up to March 2019, that's that top axis. And then this one shows you the amount of material. Okay, so all the different colors represent different countries. So this red one up here represents China. So China used to import a lot of plastic for recycling, and then they passed what's called the National Sword Policy. And you can see that after they passed this policy, it went all the way down here, their imports. Okay, so they drastically stopped accepting plastic because they got sick of taking what was essentially the world's garbage. So now they're really, really strict, and you can see that some other countries started peaking and taking in more plastic, and they also had those lines go down when they realized they were getting the world's garbage. So these countries are becoming much more strict because they were being inundated with plastic that really wasn't recyclable, and that's how you get this type of situation over here. Countries that really don't have the capacity to process a bunch of plastic that is really hard to recycle. All right, so that's why we're so strict on what we will take as plastic recycling, because we don't want to sell it to places like Cambodia, you can see in this photo, that don't have the capacity to process our plastic. We don't want to be dumping it in someone's front yard. We want it to be actually getting recycled. All right, so like we mentioned before, plastic recycling is also not closed loop. So recycling doesn't really reduce the need for virgin plastic, and that's because of that downcycling. So when I recycle a water bottle, I don't usually get another water bottle out of it. I'll get something like part of the fiber in a stretchy t-shirt or something like that, where I'm not going to recycle that at the end of its life. All right, and plastic also exists in the environment for 400 to 1,000 years before it even starts breaking into smaller pieces. So it really sticks around for quite a long time and is not great to just have in the environment. I'd also like to draw your attention over here to this figure that really only 9% of all the plastic we have ever created has ever been recycled. And otherwise it's been burned, that's what incinerated is, or it's in our landfills or floating around in the environment somewhere. All right, so we're moving on from recycling to composting. We have organics diversion programs. Really means how can we keep compostable material out of landfill. So we have a compost program. We also have a food to energy program where we turn food scraps into electricity with the help of Central Marin Sanitation Agency, the water treatment facility. And we also have our animals at the Flying Can Ranch that get to eat donated food. So we are doing all of this because we're trying to keep this organic material from sitting in the landfill, because when it does sit in the landfill, it makes methane gas and carbon dioxide. Those two gases are called greenhouse gases, and when they're in the air, they trap heat from the sun and don't allow it to escape back out to outer space. So we get things like more intense hurricanes and storms, worse flooding and wildfire seasons, all sorts of things that we want to try and avoid. So that's why we're working hard to make sure that food waste, yard waste, and soiled paper are staying out of landfill. So that's exactly what we take in our composting program, is food scraps. So this is anything you could eat but didn't eat, as well as any like eggshells and stuff like that can go in there, and bones. Really anything that you would consider food that has no plastic on it can go in there, as well as food soiled paper. So if you have a pizza party, you can put your pizza box in your compost, as well as paper plates, napkins, paper towels, your coffee filter, all that good stuff. Just make sure there's no plastic on it. Finally, we'll take plant trimmings, so like your flowers or yard waste, anything that is in your garden can go in the compost cart as well. We will not take bioplastics or compostable plastics. A lot of them don't actually work. They don't fully break down, and our composter will not take them, so we cannot accept them. Okay, so even if it's labeled compostable, we cannot take it in the compost. And I hope this goes without saying, but no plastic should ever end up in the compost, because we are going to use this compost to grow more plants, more food, etc. Alright, so a little note on the bioplastics. They're often taking much longer than they're supposed to break down. And when they escape to the environment, they're behaving pretty similarly to regular plastic, as we can see from some testing done by the 5 Gyres Institute. So I know that this chart can be a little hard to read, but in this column we have the product type, what they're claiming they are, and then how they actually perform in the environment. So the first column here is the product as it is new, and then this shows 6 months on land, 1 year on land, 2 years on land, and 2 years in the ocean. Okay, so as you can see, the only thing that really broke down was the paper straw. Everything else still has something lingering, or a lot of stuff lingering, even after years. So this isn't really quite a solution yet. Some of this stuff needs to improve before it's really truly breaking down. Alright, so landfill materials, this is all the stuff that we cannot recycle or compost. So like I said, that compostable plastic, any filmy plastics have to go in the garbage, unrecyclable plastics that are not bottles, jugs, or tubs, and then that tricky stuff that looks like paper but has a plastic lining has to go in the garbage. We really don't want your food or your recyclables in the garbage because they can be useful to us. And we don't want anything hazardous like batteries or cleaners. Those things have to go to household hazardous waste. All right, so we have made it to the end. If you have any questions, my contact information is on the slide here. And I hope you have a great time doing the virtual tour of our facility. Thank you.